Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session on RV park opportunities. Today's session is being recorded and we'll send a follow-up email to all attendees. Please enter any questions you have into the questions panel and we can have our speakers take a look at those by the end of the session. We have Jonathan Scott, who is Regional Sales Manager, Enterprise Central, and Ray Savich, Director of Product Marketing, presenting today. And we also have Rob Ener, who is Senior Vice President in Absolute Communications and Network Solutions. At this point, I'll hand the webinar over to our speakers, Ray and Jonathan. You can take it from here.
Thanks, Olivia. Obviously, RV parks are a great opportunity for service providers, for managed service providers, or even enterprises to operate their own networks. What we'd like to do today is go ahead and just kind of talk about some of the experiences and certainly include Rob in sharing his best practices. During the webinar will be recorded. We will post it to the community, and following the presentation, we'll answer all the questions that you have. I'm monitoring them, a couple of them already right now, and you can continue the conversation on the community. So Jonathan, you want to get us started?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank everybody for joining today. I think this will be a very valuable presentation. Again, definitely ask some questions. We got Rob from Absolute on the call. He's got a lot of experience in doing these RV park types of deployments. So we'll get it started here. So what does Cambium do as a whole today? Really, it's about Wi-Fi that works, right? Not only on what we're really known for on the core side for wireless backhaul, broadband solutions. We also have a very robust Wi-Fi access point portfolio. We bring CN Maestro cloud managed APs switches. So we can handle, our full wireless fabric, from the WAN side all the way to the wireless edge where the users connect. So it really comes in handy, as you can see in some of these pictures, when you have RV parks, for example, that you may not have fiber to a particular location. So with our backhaul solution, we can do point-to-point, point-to-multi-point links to kind of create that fiber-like experience, and then directly connect switches and access points and light up areas within an RV park. Ray, you want to talk about this slide here to kick off?
Sure. Yeah, one of the things that obviously in many ways this is a year like no other. Certainly families want a vacation, they want to travel and everything. But there's a lot of uncertainty about where to go, what to do, things like that. In addition, as they look at options that they have for getting together or traveling, some of the national parks remain closed, some of them are open. But when you go out in the outdoors, that gives you obviously social distancing right away. Recreation is very popular. And by going in an RV situation, you don't have to contend with the airports, you don't have to contend with restaurants, and basically people are in control of their situation, and that's kind of appealing in these days. What I've highlighted here is that a lot of people are not only looking at RVs to do long distance vacations to the other side of the country. Some folks are actually using RVs to vacation within an hour's drive from their home.
Yeah, Ray, I totally agree with you. I know Rob and I were talking the other day about, people's decision making, especially, post-COVID. A lot of folks are deciding, let's not jump on that plane, or let's not take that normal trip, to Florida across country. Instead, we got RV parks. We can do our own traveling. We can stay more secure, a little more safe. And so right now these RV parks are actually booming. And Rob, you're seeing this on your side as well from your business as far as integrating these wireless networks. Are you seeing a boom on your side as well with this need?
Well, we're definitely seeing that impact. Even RV sales from that side of things. With the RV center right down the street from our office, they usually have about 100 units, and they have like 25 in their yard. So yeah, the RV, and some of our larger, more active RV sites, we're seeing. I mean, every weekend they're 100% packed.
Absolutely. So, and that trend is going to continue, I think, especially during the rest of this, this post-COVID scenario with people, deciding, making different plans when it comes to vacations. One of the things, and I'll kind of talk about this because I've kind of worked in hospitality. I don't know how many of you on the call have been to a hotel where you may have a lot of work to do or a big presentation the next day, and the Wi-Fi just doesn't work very well, and you're kind of it affects your ability to do your job or do what needs to get done. Well, Wi-Fi is just as important of a key service in these trailer parks, especially post-COVID. When these folks are they're used to connecting every day. Everybody's got 4 or 5 devices each. They're streaming video. You've got all the Netflix. I've students. My son will download a 4K video just to hear a song on his phone, right? So, they don't necessarily always understand the impact that has on the network. But the bottom line is people want to connect at home, and they also want to connect when they're on vacation. So having great Wi-Fi at these RV parks is just as mission critical as it ever has been, if not more so. And Rob, I know you've worked with some of these parks in general, and it's definitely part of the service that they want to provide, right, from a customer satisfaction standpoint. You want to elaborate a little bit on what you're seeing with some of the RV park customers that you work with today?
Yeah, Wi-Fi is definitely a necessity in these RV parks, and one of the reasons why we picked Cambium in that is because how well it works with the clients itself and handing off from AP to AP, and the bandwidth connectivity throughout the park. I mean, some of these RV parks in the last couple of years, you'd be lucky to see 50, 60, 75 megs in these parks. Now we're seeing that we're upgrading them to 250, 500, even gigabit connections. And one of our larger parks in North Carolina, I mean, we have 800 devices on any given weekend, and we'll hit a couple hundred megs easy, and peak it throughout the day. But it's important, and not only do the kids want to watch their Netflix and everything else, but as we go into today's time and school's starting and just all the learning, home learning, the staying connected and the Zooms and all the conferences and everything else that's happening, they're going to need that bandwidth, and they need that connection point to the endpoint itself. So it's very important that the design and the coverage is strong enough to work inside these RVs from a layout, because if not, they won't be able to use their devices inside the trailers while they're trying to do this home learning.
Yeah, that's a good point, Rob. And I think there's probably a lot of families out there today that are making decisions on how they're going to approach the school year this year. I think some may have moved over to the 100% homeschooling option. And in that case, they may have that RV traveling across the country, doing their traveling homeschool. I think would be an interesting scenario. I've heard of a few folks talking about that. But yeah, the connectivity it's changing in these environments, and the criticality of it is huge.
Well, and it wasn't too long ago that even when you went to a campsite or something, you needed a connection. And now when you look at it, everybody's got 3, 4 multiple devices, and you're just going to have a huge number of devices using the network at any given time.
It's very large. Right now we're averaging between 4 to 6 devices per trailer, because it's not their their kids' tablets and their iPhones and their laptops anymore. It's all the Wi-Fi that's sitting on every TV in these trailers. I mean, some of the newer trailers are starting to come up Wi-Fi enabled in the TVs. So it's an average of a 215, 250 between cabins and RVs sites. They will see about 700 to 800 devices connect to a network in a weekend. And managing those devices the right way is very important.
Well, I found this slide that we're showing right now is kind of a review of different campsites, because obviously one of the things people do is share their experience, and some people don't wait 10 minutes. They'll share their experience right then and there. And when people are looking for different campsites, they want to take a look at what the amenities are. And I was kind of surprised to see that when you take a look at the amenities on a particular property, public Wi-Fi finishes right up at the top, and you know that's not an alphabetical list.
Yeah, it didn't used to be that important, but now it is. I mean, if you don't have Wi-Fi, it's now, especially even not just for the kids, but for the adults. You know, now that they're working from home, you know, they have the ability to travel. And you know, if you have to VPN in, or you have to be on a certain quality of network to be able to do your work remote. If not, you can't travel.
Yeah, I think today in RV sites, you know, good Wi-Fi is kind of like electricity or water. If you don't have it, you're kind of in trouble. So these reputation scores, as Ray mentioned, that they're no joke, and people are gonna you know, jump on social media immediately. You know, if that experience is not, you know, 100% what it should be. And I know that's really the goal of a lot of these resorts and RV parks today. Is it's really about end user experience. Wi-Fi in general is really about end user experience. So if that doesn't get a high grade, you know, it definitely affects the reputation of the park.
Oh yeah, and even just a quick rainstorm coming through a park, we'll see the network spike 40% increase within an hour. Just because they get a small rainstorm, the pool shut down, and boom, what does everybody go to? They go to their devices.
Yep.
Well, and I think when you take a look at the business, there's a number of different models to go with. One is kind of like a wireless ISP model, where the operator comes in, provides the equipment, and the park actually just pays a subscription fee. There's also a managed service provider model, where the park just pays a flat fee, and the managed service provider designs, operates, and runs the network on a day-to-day basis. And I have heard that there are some of the parks where they want it as an enterprise model. They will actually design their own network, build their own network. And the goal here is that each one of them is trying in their own way to provide the coverage and capacity that satisfies their end customers. But Robert, I just wanted to get your comments. Is connecting an RV park considered to be a good business?
It is. I mean, it can be very profitable business. It could be very intrusive. But one of the biggest challenges is that it's different. It's different from adding APs inside of an office building or an open warehouse. You know, your devices or your area is moving all the time. I mean, you can go out and design a network and put it in. There's hardly any RVs there, but on the weekend when it's packed, your coverage is completely 100% different, depending on the type of RVs, the height of the RVs, the density of the park, if they're cabins, metal roofs. I mean, there's so many variation, trees, etc., that really make a big factor in RVs, and it takes a little bit of experience to understand that. Sometimes more than what a heat map can give you. So it is very important, you know, and it's almost built like an enterprise network, you know, to do that. So yes, it's a good business to be in, and it's a you know, at the end of the day, you're doing customer satisfaction, and that's what we enjoy about it.
Yeah, I kind of relate or compare RV parks to warehouses when it comes to Wi-Fi. You know, in a big warehouse, you've got stuff, you've got a lot of times lots of shelving and product that's going on the shelves, coming off the shelves. And as you mentioned, Rob, you have to kind of design for the worst case scenario, but the environment's always changing. So very, very similar in these RV parks. If you take the coverage approach, versus what happens when it's full of RVs, you're gonna get yourself into trouble from a design standpoint.
Yep, height is a good factor. You can't be too high, but you can't be too low. So there's a lot of moving pieces to it. You can't overlap the APs too much, but you can't have them too far away.
Right.
And I guess when you look at the business, is there a seasonality to it, or is this something where you can install them any time of the year? I see Jacob, who's on the call right now, says that he's done a few of these already. He's got 3 more in the works right now. Is it too late to start thinking about providing improved connectivity in an RV park?
It's not. I mean, you can do it anytime. Of course, you do have a lot more customer interference when you are trying to implement this in the summer months. So if you're in a position that a network needs to be built out and there's a lot of electrical needs to be added or construction or trenching, the best time is the seasonal, winter before spring. And most of our park builds out, when we do major upgrades like that, we try to focus that between the October through February, and then we can do other improvements and stuff throughout the spring and summer. But it all depends on the site. But yes, construction is a big key factor. It all depends on how the network's being built. Are you going to cable, Ethernet, fiber? We got one part going on in North Carolina that we have pretty much fiber optic to every AP. So there's a lot of construction involved. But the good thing is it's a new build. It's a new park. 550 sites, 800 acres, massive trees and forests, 900 feet elevation changes between different areas of the park. So it's a very challenging and entertaining park.
Yeah, I going back on some of that, I think you guys are right that with this, the post-COVID thing happening and this big rush of people, especially this summer, changing their vacation plans, going to these RV parks, I think we're going to see a bit of an uptick in projects to where these, a lot of these parks are probably going to realize that they need a little more capacity or coverage or to build up those networks a little bit. So I'd say right now is definitely the time to be having these conversations.
Correct. And just having the cloud manage, if you do a prim manage or you do it in the cloud, but having that visibility to those APs all the time is very important, because most of the time when you're going to have an issue, it's going to be on the weekends, and that you have to have the ability to either repair, fix, or monitor these networks to make sure that they're online and you're not having issues there. So.
Yeah, you mentioned the other day, one of the benefits of our cloud management tool, CN Maestro, is that you have the backhaul links and the APs on the same, you can see them on the same management console. So whether it's the AP going down or the the backhaul radio, correct?
Yeah, and on EPMP, when they switch over to other APs, when things fail, we got redundancy APs. If you have meshing turned on, you have the meshing capability options there. So there's a lot of capabilities to it. And then the RV side of it, actually, we've gone through a lot of testing, and we've built custom groups on our CM pilots. So we customize how we hand off that delivery, because one of the things that's really, really important on this is Wi-Fi calling. Wi-Fi calling is very sensitive. So you have to make sure that your group is built correctly to hand off the data between one AP to another, and you're managing that traffic good enough. So because if not, your Wi-Fi calling won't work as well as you think it should.
Rob, I think at some of these RV parks, the cellular is non-existent, correct? So they very much rely on that Wi-Fi calling just to make phone calls. You may have the local cellular provider may have access, but if you're coming in from out of town, you may be out of luck, right? So that Wi-Fi is even more important.
Well, I mean, RV parks are always in a location where the cellular service is the worst because they're either next to a riverbed or in a valley or, somewhere that's more scenic, and that's why they bought the property or built an RV park there because of whatever reason.
Right.
The project that we have in Golden Valley, there is no cell phone unless you're with the local cell phone carrier that's there in that area. No cell phone coverage. So they depend on the wireless network 100% for anybody that comes in with AT&T, Verizon, any of the carriers from the outside that local market. So it's very, very important that we, voice over IP, SIP traffic, we manage it from a firewall. We have separate VLANs. We segregate the network. I mean, it's you're basically built an enterprise network, and you have to treat it as a high priority enterprise network.
Indeed, indeed. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the planning and what goes into kind of the design side of some of these. And Rob, definitely pitch in if you've got some pointers on this. If you're on the call, we have some awesome tools available on our website. One is called Link Planner, which allows you the ability to kind of map out where those vertical assets are located. Where do you have a water tower or monopoles available to get high enough to be able to extend that WAN link right out to, be a point-to-point link or point-to-multi-point. So this allows you to kind of design that, pull a bill of material in together. It takes into account, your tree height and all that sort of thing. So it's an awesome tool on our website if you haven't used it before for this sort of thing. CN Heat is another tool that uses LineR data to actually hone in on the location to determine exactly within 1 meter where that subscriber unit needs to be placed. So from a deployment standpoint, it takes a lot of the guesswork out, and from a services, truck rolls are minimized, but it really helps to fine tune that design. Another great tool on the wireless access point side is a tool called Wi-Fi Designer, which is you can pull off for free off based on the URL here, and it allows you to go into upload a floor plan. They'll say, I know some of these parks actually have cabins located, correct, Rob, where you're putting access points inside the cabins themselves, right? Or in some cases there are apartment style buildings or that sort of a building. So you're going to need to drop the APs on the floor plan and measure signal strength and that sort of thing. I actually pulled the tool up. I can show you kind of what it looks like here in a demo. I actually pulled a cabin from a park, and it allows you to kind of draw the walls. So the outside walls you can set as brick or drywall. I can continue to draw walls on the as you can see here, and the idea is to create actual signal attenuation measurements so that you can drop the APs and you can ensure that you're getting a neg 65 type or neg 60 signal strength throughout. So I'll drop an AP here and show you kind of what it looks like. So we could pick an E600 off of which is one of our most popular indoor APs, and we can drop that onto the plan. And we can also set let's see, we can turn the APs and basically get signal strength readings off of the tool here. We can also put an outdoor AP if we wanted and locate that if we're trying to provide coverage in an outdoor area. What it'll do is it'll create the signal strength based on the color codes here, so that you can ensure that you've got, in the farthest edges of the room, do you have a minimum signal strength of neg 60, neg 65, which is kind of the recommendation. So definitely try the tool out if you get a chance to get on our website. And it's cloud-based, it's free. Definitely a good slide or a good tool to take advantage of.
Jonathan, Kevin's on the call. He asked a question about subscriber equipment. Obviously you're talking about the APs inside a cabin, things like that. His specific question is, would you ever include boosters with outdoor antennas and retransmitters inside the trailers? Robert, maybe you can talk a little bit about using boosters and retransmitters.
Yeah, I mean, from our portfolio, absolutely, we do not support any type of boosters and stuff, because anytime you try to amplify or repeat a signal, you are now in a position that the APs can't do their job and transfer devices between each other. So you're actually creating a larger problem than helping when doing that, because then you start confusing the network on what it needs to do to hand off the clients to other APs. The best way to resolve or fix those weak areas is to add another pole, add another EPMP, and add another radio or fiber optic or whatever your capabilities are there. But the right way to fix it is to add another AP, not try to boost your signal.
And also on the call, he asks, do you have a planning tool to get signal through the outside of a metal trailer? Or how does that work at the actual site?
Well, I mean, there's no really tool to do that. I mean, that's you can use the heat maps, you can use the designer tool, but you have to be able to create a density coverage. I mean, you're in a metal box, so but the good thing is that the metal on trailers are thin, right? So you might be an aluminum trailer, but that trailer is full windows and it's very thin metal. So the signal does transmit in and out of those trailers. When you have the signal hitting the outside of a trailer, if it's fiberglass, you're losing about 15% density going into that trailer from a fiberglass standpoint, and you're losing about 30% going into aluminum trailer. So it depends on how far you're away from the AP. It depends on how your device will react to that 30% or 20% loss.
Yeah, I think there's one thing I'll add too. And I always kind of kept a philosophy of a design, deploy, and validate kind of 3-step process, right? So you can use the predictive tools like Wi-Fi Designer, Link Planner, that sort of thing. You then, that's part of your initial design phase, and then you deploy, right? You go and you install it, but you're really not going to know what you truly have in these environments until you go out and validate. And that's where you can use other Wi-Fi tools to go and test. I mean, maybe you need to go into one of the trailers and see what signal strength you're getting based on that predictive design that you did. If everything checks off, then you have a good design. But you may have certain areas where it's not acceptable. You need to add an additional AP. You've validated that the design is not what it should be, and you ultimately end up with an acceptable design that can be signed off on. So again, design, deploy, validate, I think is a key 3-step process to ensure that you get a good result.
And Jonathan, that design, Kevin asked the question, is that you specific to 5 gigahertz or 2.4 gigahertz or both or either?
Good question. The tool will measure both, but in today's world, most designs are 5 gigahertz centric, just because of all the interference in 2.4 gigahertz, right? You've only got 3 non-overlapping channels in 2.4, 1, 6, and 11. So when you've got a lot of devices in an area, that spectrum gets eaten up very quickly. You've got about 8 times the number of channels to use in 5 gigahertz. So, and most of the devices that connect today support 5 gigahertz anyway. So my advice is to design for 5 gigahertz. Get really good at doing channel reuse. Ensure you don't have any overlapping channels in your design. Do a good channel plan. and you're gonna end up with a really good good design.
And I agree to that. You know, if you do your design with a 5 gig design, then when you have weak coverage outside of that 5 gig area, you know that your 2.4 will create the overlapping coverage that you need.
Right.
So that's excellent coverage with that, especially when you're going into cabins, a full RV park. You know, you'd be surprised when you get past that first 80 to 100 feet that more of your devices will connect to 2.4 because of the density and because of the objects. But try to keep that design around the 5 gig, and that will ensure that you will have a good design.
Yeah, it's sometimes going to mean more APs. You know, a lot of times you're you know, in some cases you're having to turn off 2.4 radios, for example, or if you've got, you know, if you have an apartment style design or cabin design, you know, you ultimately want to create that small 5 gigahertz cell within that apartment, right? So that's really the goal. Or you know, in some cases, you know, for example, in our new Wi-Fi 6 AP that we've announced, we have software definable radios where you can actually shift the 2.4 radio, or you can have two 5 gigahertz radios and a 2.4 radio on the same access point, which, you know, again allows you to use the 5 gig spectrum at its maximum capability. So with that, Rob, you know, thanks for joining us on the call today. Any other tidbits of great data that you'd like to add about absolute Wi-Fi and some of the things that you guys bring to the table?
I mean, not really. We've kind of discussed a lot of it. You know, the best advice that I have, just because I've been there, done that, right? So the best advice that I have is that, you know, when you build and design a network, make sure you use the proper equipment, make sure you design it properly, because it will, if you don't, at the end of the day, it will eat your lunch, you know, especially in today's world. It's not, oh, I don't have Wi-Fi, you know, oh, well, it's, you know, now it's, if I don't have Wi-Fi, I'm leaving. So you need to make sure that you design it, because your name's going to be behind it. And here at Absolute, we do designs, we do layouts, and we design the right way. So that's one of the reasons why we have Cambium as a partner to do that, is because their equipment works and the design builds work out for us well.
Great, thanks, Robert. We do have a bunch of questions in the queue, and please go ahead, use the question and answer dialog box, and we'll try and get to as many of them as we can. We've got some time here. Here's a good one on management platforms. Ryan is asking for management platforms for RV parks. Is there one solution that partners tend to use more than others, whether it's CN Maestro or XMS Cloud? And maybe for those are the folks that aren't familiar with either of those, John, you want to describe those?
Sure. Absolutely. Well, the beauty of both is really it comes down to the architecture. I always say it's a distributed architecture, right? So CN Maestro and XMS Cloud are both cloud managed, but it's really not, you know, the controller is not in cloud. Really, the intelligence is at the edge. We use CN Maestro and XMS Cloud to see who's connecting, when, where, what, how many devices. We got all the drill downs in the, you know, in both options to allow you to see what's going on and to react and fix, you know, issues that come up on the network. But what's awesome about both is that you're really, you know, you're pushing configurations out to the edge in a distributed fashion. So if the management console up in the cloud, you know, goes offline, or you don't have access to it for whatever reason, your users don't miss a beat. They don't know, because you've already pushed that config out to the edge. So both options work great in this scenario. There are today the CN Maestro platform does include management capabilities of the backhaul piece in addition to the CN Maestro APs and switches. So that's a great option. But if you haven't looked at XMS Cloud, definitely take a look at that one as well. We'd love to show you either one. But the distributed architecture piece is really the beauty of it, because it's infinitely scalable. You know, when you're adding new APs or switches, you add them to a profile or a site, you plug them in, and they phone home and pull their configuration down. Your VLANs automatically set up on the switch. Your SSIDs start to broadcast and users start to connect. So it's a lot of the initial work is setting that stuff up initially, but the day-to-day management of the network is a piece of cake, because it kind of is automated based on the templates and sites and profiles that you've set up. So definitely check either out and reach out if you'd like a demo of either one. We'd be happy to go through that with you. Great.
And Robert, I think this one's for you. It's from Jacob. He's asking the question about cost in business. We've talked about the technology. Now let's talk about the business. Jacob is asking, is anyone footing the cost for the equipment and then having the campers pay to use the service through a type of captive portal?
So that was if you look back about a year or 2 years ago, that was a model, that they had that. But, the Wi-Fi internet world has gotten to the point now that people don't want to pay a nickel and dime to buy Wi-Fi services. So we're not seeing that much of a model anymore. We're seeing more of the parks including the Wi-Fi now in that. So we have packages built several different ways. I mean, we do that internally. We have management contracts. The owner owns the assets, and we have different scenarios for different parks. But we have not. We just don't do anything from a charging a Wi-Fi connection much anymore. So I think that's kind of a, and other people might have different opinions about it, but I think that's kind of a dying model. So there has been evaluations about maybe doing some upgraded packages, if you wanted more bandwidth or different things. But a lot of times people, if you get a couple megs to an end user, and it's stable couple megs to an end user, 9 times out of 10 they can get what they need done in an RV park. Now that could change a little bit now because of all the distance learning and home stuff, and they have to do Zoom meetings and all that. So we're going to see how we adapt to that. But from what I can tell, I just don't see it very much.
Okay. And as far as network design goes, Jonathan or Robert, Kevin is asking a question. Would it make sense to link the access points with 2.4 gigahertz and then broadcast on 5 gigahertz?
I can answer that. I think that's a risky way to do it, just because of the interference in 2.4. You're gonna, the possibility of someone else jumping on that same channel with a Wi-Fi device or other interference. I mean, microwave ovens, etc. Just I don't know that. I mean, it's doable, but it's going to be, I think you could be limiting or putting yourself in a situation where interference could cause some problems.
Spectrum is a big factor there, but even a larger factor is you want to maximize the bandwidth throughput to the AP, and by using 2.4, you're not going to be able to get that bandwidth you need, depending on the number of clients you're wanting to connect to that access point. So I would stick to 5 gigahertz, and so the APs can maximize the bandwidth.
Yeah, another thing I want to add, I didn't mention earlier, is when you're designing these, again, think about the applications being used. That can play a key role, right? And in this case, it's not just density, but as we mentioned earlier, if at night everybody's streaming Netflix in 4K, right? Or the application usage can very much determine how many APs are being deployed, or how much density needs to be supported.
Yep. Yeah, on top of the APs and what you do there, having a good firewall in place with quality of service and being able to do application bandwidth control is a major factor too, because if you're going to put 800 devices on a network, you have to be able to manage it. It doesn't matter how good the Wi-Fi is or how good your network is. If you're not managing the bandwidth going to your internet connection, it'll be a failure.
Okay, thank you. And Robert, I think this one's for you. What's your favorite go-to outdoor access point from Cambium to be used in RV parks?
Well, I mean, we use several different ones for several different applications. So I do like the E700s. The E700s are a really good device. From a connection standpoint, from load balancing, from the processor power that's built in the APs, handing higher volume devices off to other APs, we've seen good success with them, especially having the secondary Ethernet connection. And what you can do from there on the EPMP side is a great value add as well. We just started rolling out the 510s. We've been using quite a bit of those lately, and so far we've had really good success with those as well. So, Cambium makes different products for different reasons, and you got to look at what your design is and what you're trying to accomplish to be able to determine what AP you need for that application.
Right, and speaking about design, Lee is asking the question, do you have any advice on what height to use to mount equipment when using pole mounts?
So my sweet spot is around 20 feet. And the reason is that an average RV is about between 12 to 13 and a half feet. So, if you look at the spectrum on how an access point pushes out its signal, it's almost like a little mushroom, right? So you got to make sure that, or like a butterfly. So you got to make sure that you're maximizing the signal, to your RVs and what you're trying to throughput. So my sweet spot is 20 feet. And allows you, if you put EPMP at the top, it allows enough height for you to get over everything. And then the APs, you don't want them too high, because then you're broadcasting to the air and not really to your RV, RVers down there. So I usually put my APs around 17, 18 to 20 feet, and I try to put an EPMP right about 20 to 22 feet.
Okay, and Jacob is asking the detail question, have you ever utilized trees for mounting equipment?
I don't recommend it, just because of grounding and a tree they're big versus a small little pole. So we don't use it. I mean, we have done scenarios like that in temporary scenarios when we have to get the park up for whatever reason. But from a long-term solution, we as a company don't see that as a professional install. So we try to avoid it.
Yeah, and a couple of folks are saying that trees tend to fall once in a while.
They do.
Ryan is asking the question whether Cambium Networks offers staging and configuration services to help validate a design or help with the deployment for new partners who are looking to do this for the first time.
I can answer that. So, one thing I'll point out from the beginning is take advantage of two things. One, our partner portal is fantastic. There's training options there that you immediately have access to related to all phases of the portfolio, whether it's the backhaul stuff, the CN pilot access points, the Xeris APs, or CN matrix switches. Take advantage of the partner portal for the training aspects, and reach out if you need help finding that. And then Ray, you might want to speak about the community as well as an option too for folks getting into this to be able to see and hear other folks that are doing this sort of thing and learn as a member of the community.
Yeah, the Cambium Networks community has about 34,000 members, people who operate networks around the world. You'll find wireless ISPs, managed service providers. You'll find enterprises in there. And if you just do a search on camping, I think you'll find, or RV parks, you'll find there's a number of posts also on there. But that's the place where you can post a question. Either someone from Cambium will respond, or someone like Robert, who's been there, done that, will help share their best practices. There's no charge to the community, and you can view and read all the material without even registering. In order to post a question or post a response, you do need to register. That's just kind of goes without saying. But it's certainly a resource that's available to you. And actually, this webinar will be posted on the community sometime later today.
And as far as services, I mean, again, as a new partner, if you're doing a new project like that, we're here to help. We have distribution partners that can also help, and then we have folks like Rob who as an integration company that can come in and help deploy these projects. So I would say definitely dip that foot in and reach out. We'd love to understand what the challenge is with the particular project and work through it with you.
Great, and we have just a couple of final questions. This one's from Lee. I've heard that if access point power is too high, the signal may bounce harder off of an RV wall, and it may be used, you may want to use lower power. Any advice on this?
Anytime you have something as a hard object, you're gonna have reflection coming back from it. So I'm not sure. It depends on how dense it is, but you're far enough up in the air above it that it should not cause enough reflection to do anything. It's almost kind of like water, right? So you're not going to put your access point right above the water. It's going to be way up in the air. So the reflection is not going to be as worse. But it's any object or anything, it could, any solid object, it could reflect it. But for the most part, you should be okay. And you can look at heat maps and stuff to kind of determine that layout as well. And if you keep your APs on an auto, if they're overpowering each other, they'll adjust some.
Great. And then David is asking a question about grounding of the EPMP equipment. What's your best practice for grounding that wide area network, the EPMP stuff?
Well, we use the Cambium grounding devices that we put on everything. So we ground the poles, we ground the cabinets, we ground the equipment, we ground the protectors. So grounding, it's a weird subject sometimes. So you want to ground, but sometimes you don't want to overground too. So you want to make sure that you're properly doing some of that grounding. So the EPMP stuff, we do use the ground protectors, and we try to ground the cable with shielded cable as well. So we do what we can, but there's only so much you can do sometimes.
Great, and this will be the last question that we have time for. Dennis is asking a question: does Cambium have an outdoor access point that will support a mesh configuration on 60 gigahertz? I think, Dennis, if you stay tuned to Cambium Networks, you'll see that we have an 802.11ay solution that does support meshing that is currently in development and will be coming out soon. And this is my chance to shamelessly plug that we have a webinar coming up with two of the engineers from Facebook talking about how to do 60 gigahertz with the Teragraph system. And I believe that webinar is, there's one Thursday night and Friday. So I'd encourage you to check that out, and they'll be able to answer that question in detail there. Well, thanks everybody for your time. It's been great. We will continue, obviously, the conversation on the community. Thank you, Robert, for joining us today, and Jonathan, great job.
Yeah, I want to say, Rob, again, thanks for joining. If anyone out there is looking for, for help in these situations, Rob's company does a fantastic job. So definitely reach out, and thanks everybody for joining today. Appreciate it.